A few days ago, I saw an announcement from the GNOME Foundation. Everyone, universe, this is Jay Miller, by the way. Say hi to the universe, Jay.
Oh, hello, universe.
I saw an announcement from the GNOME Foundation that they were going to be partnering up with Black Python devs, and you were going to be part of their foundation, or they were going to be handling finances for you or something. And here's the thing. I had never heard of you guys before. And I'm like, well, I gotta find out more. So I joined your Discord, which I will talk about more in a moment.
Which option did you pick? I just gotta know.
Okay. So when you join the Black Python Devs Discord, it makes you choose. It says flat out, you can join, but you gotta be black. And
it doesn't say that. It just says, do you identify as black? That's all it does.
Okay, so here's the thing. For about 10 seconds, a few days ago, I identified as black in order to click that button, but only for those few seconds. Just to put this in context, I am the least black person on the entire planet. I had my DNA tested once. Supposedly, I'm like part Cherokee and a few other things. I had my DNA tested once, and according to the DNA profiler, like all 100% of my DNA is like pure Northwestern European white. Like there is somehow miraculously nothing else in me. So I am probably one of the few people on earth that has no place in pushing the button that I pushed to join your Discord channel.
and no one said anything.
It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So Jay, you created this Black Python Devs organization. You created it, what, like a year ago? Something like that?
Yeah, a little bit over a year ago.
Okay. What is it? Give everyone the elevator pitch, the big high level of what Black Python Devs is.
Okay. But before I get to that, I just have to tell you, no matter what button you press, you get the same Discord experience. Some of the channels some of the channels are not actual. They're not hidden. Like you don't lose access to them. It just doesn't show them.
I agonized over it for like 5 minutes. I'm like, what button should I push? I mean, because I wasn't there to participate. I just wanted to like chat with you and set something up and everything. And I'm like, which one do I push? Like, I don't know what to do. Like, okay.
Yeah, okay.
What is Black Python Devs? I mean, we can gather it's Python developers who are black, but like, what is?
Yeah. So the interesting thing is, I've been in the Python community for almost a decade now, and we have this running, I would call it a joke if it weren't true. You know, usually what's the thing, like sometimes there's always a little bit of the truth inside of these jokes. But there were always like the same 3 black people at every Python conference. Myself, a Ghanaian woman by the name of Abigail Dogby, and then a friend of mine from Texas named Kojo Idrissa. And what we would notice is we would always see each other at these conferences and like no one else that looked like us. And you know, it was this running conversation because we were like, where are all the black people? Like Python is the most popular language on the planet. It is used by so many people around the world.
It's everywhere.
But yet, yeah, we go to these events, we go to meetups. I've been a meetup organizer almost as long as I've been in the Python community. I've served in meetups, you know, across Python, JavaScript, a couple of like polyglot generalist meetups. And it's always the same conversation of like, there are like no black people here. And when we looked at the structures that were like the Python Software Foundation and like the Python leadership, you have a lot of like representation. Like they go out of their way to make representation this thing. So my first PyCon US, this is the Super Bowl of Python events, was in 2022. I had just started at Microsoft. I was actually starting at Microsoft that week, and I was going to meet my team there. So I was like, okay, the largest gathering of Python developers, there has to be like at least 100 black people here. There were 12. I counted. So this was kind of an issue for me, in that I was like, okay, I'm seeing our faces on social media for like, hey, come and participate. We have opportunity grants. We want you to get on stage and speak. And like, I talked to all 12 of those individuals that I counted, and they all basically said the same thing. I'm here because my employer paid me to be here. I'm here because I'm looking for a job.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm not here because I want to be here or I want to contribute to the community. I'm here to do some type of thing. So from there, I was like, okay, we got to fix that because I've been in the community. I've been like dying to go to my first PyCon US. So I'm like, I just want to say I got my first.
Is excited to go to their first conference. It's like about the 50th conference or so that it makes your eyes bleed and makes your soul die. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. So I sit down with some friends and I talked to the three, the big conference, three of us, the triangle of Black Python developers representing conferences.
The Black Python Trinity. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And ultimately what we saw was that there was like two problems. One was that word just wasn't getting to Black communities as like a first step of, hey, did you know that you can do this? Did you know that they have these opportunities where you can go sometimes even for free? They'll pay for your hotel. They'll pay for your travel. Like there's a lot of things that you can benefit from. And it's not just for Black people, it's for everyone. If this is your first event, you can, sign up for an opportunity grant and attend it for free. And that's fantastic.
That's true. They do have a whole bunch of things that, if this is your first conference, they'll pay for at least a little bit of it. Yeah. That's nice.
And so like, that was the first big thing was that like a lot of this information, a lot of these conferences, these events, they don't, like the Black community doesn't even know they're happening. And some of that, my first PyCon US was in Salt Lake City, Utah. Not a very diverse community. And in fact, that's one of the things that we look at when we talk about conferences that we want to support and help is where are they being located? What's the demographics of the location that they're in? So when you have that on top of like, we just got out of a pandemic. So I'm like, that's also a problem, but that's also like hey, we can start fresh here. Everyone's doing conferences differently now. Everyone's doing hybrid events. Like we can really work to make something cool happen here. We decided that, that first problem is a simple one. The second problem was like this perception of, again, like when you go have your events PyCon US is historically we're at very culturally diverse places. And it was about after their 10th year when they started getting relatively big. Once you stopped counting in the hundreds and started counting in the thousands, that was when what we noticed was, yeah, exactly. And big conferences have big conference problems. And the biggest one is cost. It's really hard to do an event for 3,000 people in Atlanta, Georgia, where there is a very diverse community. It's a lot easier to do it in somewhere like Montreal or Portland, Oregon, or Salt Lake City, Utah. So we started noticing that the Python conferences were being held in these predominantly white places, which we say predominantly white as in over 65% of the population in a location. Okay. So there was this perception of like, you're not making this easy for us, so why would we want to be a part of it? It doesn't seem like you're actively working to get us there. You'll put our pictures up on screens, but you're not really like connecting with us. You're not going to the schools that we go to.
You were seeing all these conferences. Take the picture of the 12 Black people that existed at these conferences, put them all over social media, but you wanted more. You wanted more Black people to be there. And you wanted it to be maybe held in locations that would maybe help to facilitate getting more Black people there. Am I understanding right?
Or at least begin the conversation of like, okay, let's actively work to make the representation that we're putting up on social media like effective. And again, this is often done in the best of interests.
So just a side note. So my wife is a software developer as well. And way back in our early days of marriage, we went to a worldwide developer conference from Apple. This was back when they were held in San Jose before they moved to San Francisco. Okay. And they took her picture in a shot. And she was wearing a cute little dress. And she was just looking all adorable with her long brunette hair, And she was the only girl in a sea of men. men, right? And
Yeah.
they used that picture to advertise the Worldwide Developer Conference as the big banner image for almost 10 years. For 10 years, they could not find another picture in all of Worldwide Developer Conference of a cute-looking lady to say, hey, ladies, come. My wife kick about that. Every year, as soon as WWDC get announced, she'd go to the website, be like, are they using me again? Yeah.
And the interesting part of this was at the present time, the Python Software Foundation's president is a Black woman. There is a lot of culture. A lot of these pictures were actually Black people saying, people that look like me. Yep. Hey, let's do this. But again, like when you go to these events and then you can't find anyone else that looks like you.
They look like me.
It gives
they
the opposite
mostly
perspective.
without the facial hair, which is a problem.
I was going to say more beard, honestly. Sometimes more beard. It goes like all the way down into your chest.
I have been
some ways
utterly disappointed at the lack of beards lately. I've been going to conferences and the neck beards have disappeared, and I'm used to me having the scrawny beard, and nowadays I have like the better one half the time, and that's just not right.
I intentionally didn't shave for PyCon US because I was as much as I'm embarrassed by my inability to grow a beard, I wanted to at least feel some type of solidarity.
Good on you. Good on you, because that's where it's okay. So what is like I hate to say what's the 5-year plan, but like looking forward, like what's the ultimate goal? Like when you think of what you want Black Python devs to accomplish, I kind of get what you're saying, but what's like 5 years from now, what's a success story there? Like what would you like to see?
The success story is kind of a change in thought. If you look at our website, the first thing that you see other than our name is the phrase extending the Python community to our communities. And that's true. As I mentioned before, they're working to change this perspective. DjangoCon, one of our other large events for the Django Web Framework, is being held in Durham, North Carolina. And we've worked with the Django Events Foundation of North America for a couple of years now, even before we were like a community now nonprofit thing. Just, hey, my friends that help run this event, here are some things that we could probably do to help with that. So even when you're in Durham, North Carolina, which is a diverse community, it's in the Triangle. There are some very wonderful historically Black colleges and universities that are there. And for those that don't know the importance of that, an overwhelming majority of computer technology professionals that are Black in America are graduates of historically Black colleges and universities. So like, the target demographic of Black professionals that you want to be reaching are a few miles away. And what we want is for that to be a thought of, hey, we're doing this event in this area. North Carolina has a lot of HBCUs. I wonder if we should reach out to them. Maybe we can offer some tickets. Maybe we can talk to their alumni coordinator to see who's in the area. Maybe we can encourage them to speak. We've learned that having local representation on stage encourages the community to stay more invested. So it really is this idea of, if there is a community that is focusing on, hey, don't forget to think about the Black people in this. And by the way, we've done a lot of that thinking for you. So like you can reach out to us and we can help you facilitate these conversations so that, later on you've established those relationships on your own. Like that's really what we're trying to do. And it's not just for the US. We've run into some issues recently where I don't know if you know, but politics are hard across the globe.
They're a little tricky. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've heard this.
So there is an interesting thing where the local politics of a country will find a way to alienate citizens of that country from getting involved in the rest of the world's community. And that's a tough thing because those individuals have nothing to do with this. Most of them didn't have a choice in who they voted for, or if they did vote and their votes didn't count, or there's a lot of these things. And what we were hearing were, we're trying to do this, but then we don't get funding because of reason. Sometimes it's the US's fault, and it's like, hey, you have sanctions against your country, and there's like literally nothing that we can do because you lose nonprofit status if you give money to that organization.
Right. That does make sense. Yeah. Those are tricky.
But the interesting thing is those sanctions change all the time.
You got to stay abreast of them constantly so you don't screw
exactly.
up.
So
being an international nonprofit is hard.
Yes.
Yeah. No.
And what surprised me was so an example of this is the country of Zimbabwe. I'm sorry, Zimbabwe. I have to say it correctly, otherwise everybody in the Zim community yells at me.
I'm going to be very, very clear that if I do say the name Zimbabwe, I am probably going to pronounce it wrong, and I'm fine with that. I pronounce everything wrong, so nobody take offense at me screwing up any pronunciations. I screw up everything.
Yeah. But this country's sanctions were just not fully reversed, but they were modified so that now Python developers in Zim can actually receive funding. We can sponsor events. We can do these things.
That's cool.
To my surprise, when I brought this up to other organizations and said, hey, have you considered donating to Zimbabwe? And they go, oh, we can't because of sanctions. Well, actually, this has changed. And again, it's being an organization that thinks about these things and is able to advocate on behalf of those individuals, because they're not reaching out to these organizations, because when they do, they get told no.
So, okay. I think I'm following you. Is there a way you can quantify what you're going for? Like, you know what I mean? Like when I think, let's say, so I'm not black, I'm Jewish. So if I were to create Jewish Python devs, and if my goal was to make sure there were more Jewish Python devs, I would want to have like a goal, like what's my percentage number, or do I want to hit 10? Do I want to make sure that, because I tell you straight up, if you can find 12 black people at a dev conference, there's only 4 Jews. Like there's just not that many of us. You'd think there's not that many. So, I would want to say, okay, here's my goal. Over the next 5 years, I want to get this many of us, or, you know what I mean? Do you have like a goal in mind of percentage, or is it really more of an ephemeral, change the thought dynamic sort of a thing? I like numbers. Is why I'm asking.
It really is a
How
change
do I put
the
this
thought
on a
dynamic.
spreadsheet and make a graph, man?
So I would say you could look at our growth. Our internal goal is to be the largest collective of Black Python developers. When we say, and I know this is going to start another conversation.
Are there others?
So let's put a pin in this. When I say the largest community of Black and colored Python developers, which I know Americans clutch their pearls. There's a reason for this. But I'm glad that you talked about
the word colored. Oh, okay.
Exactly.
I saw that little hubbub too. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
In case anyone's wondering, I have no problem saying any word. I get yelled at for saying everything, so whatever. It doesn't matter. Okay, continue.
So I'm glad that you mentioned like the idea of like a Jewish community for Python developers. This was actually one of the big reasons why we felt like we needed to become a formal community. I have a friend that lives in Southern California.
For Jewish Python developers? Okay, sorry, continue.
Yes,
continue.
In some ways.
I'm ready.
I have a friend who is Mexican, very much from Mexico, family from Mexico, born in Mexico, raised in Mexico, now lives in Southern California. And when we were talking about this problem that we had, his response was, I just kind of hang out with the Indian folk because people just look at me and they see a brown person at a Python event and assume that I'm Indian. And that was when we were like, whoa, hold on, wait, pause, say what? Like that's just a completely different issue. But what we realized was that global diversity in general is hard, and diversity means different things to different communities. And in fact, the reason why we use the word colored and have it as an inclusion to Black is that there are people who will say, I'm not Black, I'm Puerto Rican. I'm not Black, I'm Dominican. I'm not Black, I'm Afro-Brazilian.
Sure.
So so there is definitely this issue of like, we want you to feel welcome based on like the solidarity of you have felt excluded because the community at large hasn't thought about your situation when they think of diversity. Often when we think of global diversity, again, we think of women in tech because usually segregation based on gender is a very big deal. It's something that we can look at in politics. It's something we can look at in the media, but really the situation of like Blackness and how it deals with being employed it's effectively sporadic. It only affects certain countries. I mean, if you go to Kenya, Blackness in Kenya is just called living. It is a very different thing. But as these individuals in Kenya and other parts of Africa, when they go and look for jobs, they're often looking at European and American jobs, which means they have to think about some of the same systemic and historical issues that Black Americans have faced. Furthermore, when they go to America, they have to deal with some levels of discrimination, not just by white individuals, but also Black Americans. So there is a kind of I don't want to say like a very like wishy-washy, like let's all be unified under one common issue here.
Sure.
But in some ways that is the case. And let's set the example so that Southeast Asian communities, so that religious communities, so that other cultural communities don't look at us and say, let's do the same thing, but look at the framework that we've built and say, how do we adapt that to our culture and use it in a way that is going to help people realize that, yes, there are Jewish Python developers. Yes, there are Mexican Python developers. There's
only a couple of Jewish.
Apparently, I don't know. I know a few. I know a few amazing ones, honestly.
I know it likes to, people like to make it a meme. They're like, look at the Jews everywhere. There's only a couple. This is not that many of us.
and the ones that are there are usually doing exceedingly great things, and that's the thing that we ultimately want to showcase is that the folks that are here, we're not finding new developers, we're finding existing leaders in their communities and saying, hey, did you know that there's this whole group here that's doing great things? You should talk to them because maybe you'll gain something from them.
So as of right now, how big is the organization? Like how many? It's weird. I'm almost made somewhat uncomfortable about saying how many
Black folk do we have?
How many Black folk are we got? Like I don't want like so here's another thing. When you talk to a Jewish person about lists of people, we immediately start going, I don't think this is a thing we want to go. This is not a road we like to go down. But like, how big is the organization right now? Like,
so right now we have 500 members worldwide.
Holy maholies! Are you for real? 500?
Yeah, and
bigger than I thought it was going to be.
It took us 6 months to get the first 100.
So it's really taken off.
Absolutely. And that was one of the reasons why we had to make the decisions of like, what we have is an opportunity to really make a difference for a lot of people and partner with the GNOME Foundation in that.
So let's talk about the GNOME Foundation thing, and then I am going to hold your feet to the fire on a couple of things here.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. The GNOME Foundation, what does that relationship look like? Like like how involved is GNOME going to be in what you do, or you in what they do? And like, how does that work? Are they just processing payments for you? Like what's the relationship?
The contractual agreement is that they process payments.
Okay. So that's the official thing.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I'm assuming you've sat down with like some of their leadership to talk about that. Have you talked to their new executive director?
Absolutely. In fact, their executive director reached out to us about being our fiscal sponsor.
I have a complaint to lodge right now because I know Holly is going to be watching this. Every journalist in the tech world has been trying to get Holly Million, the new executive director, to do an interview. She has not responded to anybody.
So what you do is you start a Discord. You say,
I start a Discord. Come and hang out with my all Jew Python developer Discord and hang out with me, Holly. I don't got that kind of time, my friend. I just don't got the energy to do that. So okay, but you got to. So you've been interacting with them. So my guess is, like, the GNOME Foundation really their values, I'm guessing, kind of aligns with what you're doing. Like, I mean, I think it's worth it's worth noting that because every organization has their different structure about what their goals are. And I noticed the GNOME Foundation just released their 5-year plan, right? Yeah. And did you read that as well? So it's very short. It's like a page and a half, and it's very vague, but diversity, equity, inclusion was a very big part of their 5-year plan for the GNOME Foundation. And so it kind of does make sense that they'd want to work with an organization that was promoting some sort of diversity goals. And so I'm guessing you found some sort of alignment there.
I mean, yeah, it was this moment of, again, we are a community of people who are already leading other communities and like struggling in doing that. So you have meetup organizers, conference organizers. None of these people are nonprofit experts.
Sure.
Which is a thing. I think a lot of folks, oh, let's become a church so that we can marry people and go down that road. But there really is a lot of like business behind running a nonprofit that we don't think about, like liability insurance. Anytime you say we're creating a group specifically for a particular group of people, lawsuits are bound to happen.
My heavens, yes. I mean, you literally have a button when you join your Discord that says essentially, and
you're making me want to remove the button now.
It says, "Is you black?" And I was like, "Oh, dang." They are going to get complaints about this.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. Like, my first instinct, I saw that and I'm like, screenshot. That's crazy. Like, yeah. And I have to ask him about that. And you already addressed that as kind of a jokey thing. But like, I mean,
it's not really a jokey thing.
Well, no. But the way you,
yeah. It is a feeling of like, understand that you're going into a very unapologetically black space. And that while most black people that I know are code switching their entire day, whether they're dealing with their coworkers, whether they're dealing with the people around them, whether they live in communities that are predominantly white, and they have to do it as a protection mechanism, they have to basically put on this mask and get ready for what's about to happen. Okay. And this is a place that allows you to say, okay, first of all, when you come in for the first time, what you're going to notice is you are not the only black person in the room. So therefore that mask can immediately come down.
Hey man, I am all for walled garden country club-esque type things where we say, this is us, these are who we are, everyone else stay out so at least we can hang out. Like I'm fine with that.
And our code of conduct and our policy absolutely prohibits questioning people on their blackness. It is a thing that we don't do. It's not our job to police or gate blackness. It is our job to go out and try to support black communities.
I am not going to dive into that because I'm going to tell you straight up that, again, I'm a very spreadsheety numbers guy. That confused the heck out of me. I don't even know how to say this nicely. I don't understand how you can't, like, okay, so I'm Jewish, right? Yeah. I know how to quantify that. I know when I'm talking to someone else, I can question. Like if you came up to me right now and said, "Hello, I'm Jewish," I'd be like, "All right, that seems entirely plausible," and I have a very serious, maybe 2 questions I can ask you that would ascertain whether or not you are in fact Jewish. And then I would know as a Boolean, yes, no, true,
practicing
false, are you Jewish? Right? Like I get like religious, ethnic, like was your mother? Like I go down the line, I'm like, oh, not Jewish. I immediately know. And so are you Scandinavian? Yes, no. Like it's a Boolean. It just seems so obvious to me. So
but blackness isn't binary. And I'm not going down the road of like blackness is a spectrum or anything, but a great example of this, my wife is white, my daughter is mixed. Is my daughter black?
Sure.
Not in every culture. Huh. Some people would not consider my daughter, I mean, she would be mestizo or actually she would be mulatto, considering my wife is very, very European. So there
I guess that's fair. My wife's family has had this argument amongst themselves because they are, I think, maybe like 5 to 10%. I can't remember what country they were from. It was like Chad or something like that region. And so in theory, they're black. They are pasty white people. So, but are they black? In the one drop rules or whatever you want to bring out, they would be. But do they look at? Some of them actually do. Every now and then a baby is born and they're like, hey, there you go. There's grandpa, right? Like you see it, right?
Yeah.
But then different cousins are like, no. And other cousins are like, oh yeah. So they go back and forth. So I guess I understand that, but I don't know. It seems like it's okay to question it. Like,
I mean, but it is hard, and it also creates a sense of alienation. And honestly, you're right. We should actually modify those two
if
buttons.
I joined you right now and started talking in there and put my picture right here up like this, it would be totally okay of you to question my blackness because I am
absolutely
the least
not
black person ever. Like,
absolutely not.
It wouldn't.
In fact, one of our advisors who is unapologetically white, one of our advisors, Carol Willing, who has been a mentor for me in my entire career, and is she on the website? I don't think she's on the website, but she is in some of our record stuff. Like, you can find her name across Black Python devs in many places. Absolute white, absolutely a member of the Discord. It's not a problem.
She clicked the button.
Yeah, we have people. No, she didn't. But again, like I said, the button is more of like a, hey, I'm just going to warn you, like you're about to enter a black space. Like it's going to be different.
It's all good. All right. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions now.
Sure.
Okay. And I fully recognize that some of these questions are going to get me yelled at, and that's fine. Okay. The first question is, when you look at your computer in front of you right now, is it running GNOME?
It's not.
Good.
I'm using a Mac.
Yeah.
I'm using a Mac. We use G Suite stuff. Like we haven't been pushed to go down Linux boxes or anything like that. No. There's no pressure to do that. And there's no, in Holly's words, it would not change our relationship in any way, shape, or form if no one from Black Python devs ever contributed to a GNOME project or ever went to GWADEC or FOSDEM and representing GNOME.
So the reason I bring this up is it regularly happens, and it's just usually entertaining that someone from GNOME or the Linux Foundation or some other organization will go to an event and they'll open up their MacBook and everyone laughs because they're not running Linux like the foundation they run, or they're not running GNOME. Like I've seen so many presidents and executive directors of GNOME not run Linux at all. And so,
Holly has made me use some apps that I've never heard of before, so I'm pretty sure that she's trying to buck that trend. But
is she trying to?
Yes, I've jumped on some very open source tool like video meeting stuff that I'm like, what is this link that I'm being sent to? Is this good? Okay, awesome. Hey, you like it? I love it. Like, this is fantastic.
So Holly Million, who has no experience in this world,
I don't speak on behalf of her.
No, but that's great. I mean, I think that's fantastic. Like when she became the executive director, I was I don't want to say critical, but I did have a good laugh at the fact that she was previously a professional shaman, and I'm like, I've never seen that career progression before. Like, that was a new one to me, right? Like, and so I had questions like in your role as a shaman, were you using KDE? Like, what was they didn't like those questions. Anyway, all right, moving on. Okay. Let's assume, I know you don't really have like a number target in mind of how many, black or black identifying Python devs will be at a conference or be at certain conferences in order to reach any certain goals over the next year. But is there a threshold within the Python community where if you are so successful, Like, you pull from so many different communities, so many different Black communities, that you just make it so, let's say, 40, 50, 90% of every Python developer on every project at every event is Black. At what point does the existence of an organization called Black Python Devs no longer interesting to you? Like, what's the threshold?
I don't think, one, if 90%, then yes, we're doing a fantastic job, and I think we have to keep doing that. More than 12 is the answer.
No, wait. So if you hit 90%, you would keep going with Black Python devs to get more Black Python devs?
Absolutely.
What if 100%? What if you showed up to PyCon and there was just you guys and me, one white Jewish journalist in the audience taking notes, and it was just a sea of nothing but Black Python developers? Would you still have an organization called Black Python Devs?
Absolutely.
Why? What would it do? Like, what would the goal be at that point?
So this reminds me of 2020, a very confusing year for most people. And there was an instance where George Floyd had just happened. Everybody was completely on board. Everyone's like, yo, we need to do as much as we can to help the Black community. There's all of these problems. Let's sit down. Let's have the fireside chats. I was invited to a couple of them. Hey, what's it like being the only Black developer, on your team? And I'm like, it feels like everywhere else I've worked, kind of those conversations happening. And we started to think, maybe this is the time where we can really start to make progress. And 2 years later, no one cares anymore. We see diversity, equity, inclusion programs getting slashed. We see all of these things happening. I was surprised that we were able to raise almost $16,000 at PyCon US, which was our announcement of like, hey, we're a thing. This is what we're here for.
Yeah.
But I would tell you that at that exact same conference, over $60,000 was raised for another group. And again, it's not a competition between us and that group.
Well, it's always a little bit of a competition.
I mean, money's going to go in one or two directions. But no, I donated to that group. That doesn't work that way. But ultimately, what
it was
we
the
see,
Scandinavian Python devs, wasn't it?
It was actually Py Ladies, and they're a fantastic group, do a lot of work. And what we've come to believe is that you have to have someone continuing to push for improvement, because eventually it will become not popular to push for improvement.
If you hit 100%. Of having like what is there?
The backlash will be so severe that it'll be down to 5 the next week.
There's backlash towards anything. Like
exactly.
Yeah, I've mispronounced the word GNOME 7 times, and I'm going to get backlash just for that. Like that's just how
let the record show. I did say that it was GNOME.
He did correct me before we started, and I told him I will not be corrected, man.
But no, I agree with, like, yes, if we see progress is great. I mean, one, we're not going to hit 100%. We're just not.
What is the progress towards?
The progress is toward communities.
Like, again, no, hold on. I need to rephrase that question before you dive in. Again, my analytical spreadsheet mind is thinking, what is the progress towards that I can put in a database or a spreadsheet? Like, how can I quantify or qualify that? Like not just, I don't want to say that what you were about to say was ephemeral, wishy thinking stuff.
It's hand wavy.
But
it's hand wavy. You can say hand wavy.
And I love my hard numbers, man. And so when someone comes to me and says, I want diversity, I'm like, okay, great. What does that mean? Does that mean we need to have the representation of people within this group to be an exact percentage representation of the physical locales in which the group exists? Does it mean something else? Like, what does it mean exactly?
I like that you mentioned kind of in proportion to what the demographic is.
I liked that too.
In that area. That is something, again, that is something that we do, in that we're not expecting 100% in an area that is 15% Black.
Right.
But we'd like to see 15% though. 15% in an area that's 15% kind of makes sense. And the challenge that we have there is
wait. Does it? No, hold on,
Yes.
hold on. Devil's advocate here. So before software engineering sucked the soul out of my body and I became a journalist, right? So this was, over a decade ago. I was a VP of engineering for a games company in Seattle, Washington.
Sure.
And we had a for lack of a better word, an affirmative action set of quotas within our company that we had to hit. Those quotas involved mostly women, right? It was mostly about we had to hire certain numbers of women into the company. It was the hardest thing about my job because I couldn't get people to apply who were ladies. And so I'd have 20 roles to fill, and I would go out there to conferences, and I did everything except hold up a neon sign saying, ladies, 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 apply for my job. And I got at one point, I was so ecstatic because I got 2 women that applied for a job in a sea of hundreds of men. And I ended up hiring both of them because I had to hit my quotas. Otherwise, I was going to get in trouble from our board of directors. So I literally ended up having to hire. Now, one of them was a fantastic developer that I would have hired over any other dude. The other one stunk. Like, she was terrible, but she literally got hired because she was a lady. And I kind of felt horrible for her because she was very nice, but she knew she got hired. Like, she could tell. Like, she understood what was happening. And so now, there are more ladies than men in Seattle, Washington, by about like 1.5%, right? So just a little bit more.
Okay.
But yet the ratio of men to women in development does not represent that because the women aren't currently in it. So is it reasonable to expect when you poll women going into college, do you want to be in software? Most of them say, no, I do not want that. Now, some do, and some say, I wish it was easier, and some say, I wish there was more ladies, and I'm with them. But most of them don't. In fact, so many of them don't that it's almost impossible to hit that parity with the local populace. So is it reasonable, let's just say for ladies, to expect that we hit that parity? Is a reasonable thing to even shoot for?
And here's why I say yes. So in that moment,
lay it on me.
So in that moment when you were trying to hire for women, did you sit down with women professionals and ask, hey, how often do you self-disqualify yourself from even applying to a role because you don't fit one of the descriptions that we would really like for this person to have 8 years in a language that's only 5 years old? Or, something like that.
I'm going to tell you straight up, my job listings are the best. I never list college requirements or year requirements. I just did a thumbs up, and for some reason over my face appeared a little bubble.
You're using a Mac, aren't you?
I am. That was weird. I've never seen it do that before, and I didn't like it. Don't do that again, my Mac.
Yeah, there's a reactions thing.
That's creepy.
Yeah.
But I always just listed, here's what we're working with. Talk to us. Yep. And so I basically removed all barriers, just flat out. And not just for women or different minority groups. I just wanted the best devs. And I always felt like I could get the best devs if they just showed me why they were the best devs for the job. And so I let them tell me why. And it made my job harder because I had to sift through more resumes. But so I removed all of those.
So if there was
less women developers, there just are. Every hiring manager knows this. There are less women developers.
So if there was an organization that was working with the less women developers and saying, here are some ways that we can make sure that, one, you are a good hire. With that reality of like, let's talk about like the role, like we're hiring for a senior level role. Here are the expectations of a senior level role. Like let's work on that. If you had a community that was advocating on your behalf, well, not even on your behalf, on their behalf, that you could say, hey,
that you could go to and give me a list.
Well,
I want
maybe
a list
not a
of
list.
Ladies. No. Jay Miller says we need to create a list of women.
So interesting enough, diversifytech.com is a job board that focuses on diversity and has certain requirements that have been known that to make historically excluded people in the tech space more intrigued on applying. And this is, salary transparency. This is, what's your policy on maternity leave? What's your policy on hybrid work? Things like this. What is your childcare, allowance and things like these things that matter to individuals that have those concerns. Yeah,
well, but everyone has those concerns. Literally everyone has those concerns.
But how many people are willing to sacrifice those concerns for the job because they just want the job?
Some. Across the board. Some. Okay. All right. Let's continue with this for a second. Along the same line of thought. If you have an organization like Black Python Devs, inevitably that is going to bring people up and say, well, that is not an inclusive organization. That is by definition an exclusive organization, right? Because it is excluding specific people. It's not really including more people, it's excluding more people.
Yeah.
You'd have this for any sort of country club or anything where you have set of rules. I know, right?
See my keynote about country clubs at DjangoCon 2023.
Did you have one of those?
Oh, sorry, 2022.
Did you? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, but
yes,
so it's an exclusive thing. Now,
yes.
I'm not personally against that, but people are going to say that. What would you say to that? To say is an exclusionary group a bad thing or a good thing? Is it necessarily one of the other? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think when it comes to groups that have been excluded, creating exclusionary groups makes sense.
Okay.
And also it gives you a sense of sorted focus. And in that, we recognize exclusion and we try to be within the bounds of that exclusion as inclusive as possible. One of the things that we talked about in our when we talked about that like we use the usage of the word colored. Again, Americans clutch their pearls, but people in South Africa who are part of the Cape Colored people would say, oh, hey, that means I'm also allowed to join. That means people who are Maori, who are Aboriginal, where the Maori don't say that they're black, but Aboriginals use blackness as a term of endearment. They're both welcome. So us being able to say that we are making difficult decisions in the idea that we understand that Indigenous people across North America have a different relationship to what blackness is and their position in it. So we have to work to say, yes, we are a community that tries to focus on the individual challenges of people who have been defined primarily by their skin tone. And what we're going to do is we're going to work and do our best to create a space that advocates on their behalf.
Okay. Is anyone advocating against those groups right now?
Is anyone advocating? I think people advocate against. Actually, yes.
I mean, this is right. This is actually lay it on me. What do you got?
People are advocating against groups that do what we are trying to do.
No. Okay. Who's advocating against that right now?
I will not name names, but what I will say is I have withdrawn talks from events where organizers have said, we don't have a diversity problem. People of color just need to they need to submit more talks. And to me, this is a very you're right. People of color should submit more talks. And in fact, we're working on that. We do CFP workshops where we try to get people to submit more talks.
Yeah.
However, when what you see are we allow one person to get up who is black and get on stage, and that person is Kelsey Hightower, who is like,
I got to tell you, I've had enough of Kelsey Hightower.
I've had a lot of good conversations with Kelsey, but when there is one person that is on stage and they are the only person on stage, you look at where Kelsey is in his career and you go, I'm not there yet, therefore I'm not qualified to speak. Oh. And this is regardless of, and I talked about this in my keynote at PyCon, which the video is not out yet. It'll be out eventually. Good. Sometimes it doesn't matter what the reality is. What matters mostly is the perception. And this is very similar to a cultural thing that happened in the 90s, where there was a perception that Tommy Hilfiger made this quote that said, "I don't make my clothes for black people. In fact, if I knew that they were wearing it, I would have never created this clothing line."
Did he say that?
He did not say that. He said something to the effect of he was surprised by how the culture had picked it up. And someone took that and ran with it and said, Tommy Hilfiger hates black people. To this day, I own 0 Tommy Hilfiger in my collection because it is so ingrained in the black identity for so many people that black people do not wear Tommy Hilfiger.
I had no idea. I don't know if I have any Tommy Hilfiger either, but
well, there is also that. I mean,
the only thing that stops me is when I'm walking in the mall and you walk past a Tommy Hilfiger, they have like this smell, this like perfumey cologne smell that comes out of their store, and it's just too much for me. I keep walking.
So when you have the perception of this is a space where I don't feel welcome, I went one time, I was the only person in the room, nobody talked to me, and everyone was afraid of bringing up the conversation of like, how does it feel to be the only person in the room that looks like you? Or they love to bring that conversation up and not ask you about, anything that you're doing from a technical standpoint, or even worse, my favorite, you come in and they assume that you know nothing about the technology regardless of your technical experience. And they ask you stupid questions like, do you even know Git? Which is the thing that happened in the last month.
That's ridiculous.
So when these things happen, do people really want to go and speak at those conferences?
I get you.
Versus the alternative where you have a conference that says, we understand if we're in Southern California, or even better, we're in the Bay Area, we could go to UC Berkeley, we could go to Stanford, and we could say we want the best and brightest developers. How easy would it be to go to Oakland City College or Oakland, a school in a predominantly black area, and say, hey, who are some amazing students, regardless of their race, but who are some amazing students in this predominantly black college who are doing fantastic? We would love to give them a ticket to our conference. We'd love for them to get up and speak and talk to our community about what they're talking about. So it's not a matter of, oh, black people need to just submit more talks. It is a matter of like, again, if they don't know you exist, how could they submit a talk to you? And if you're not going to the spaces that they're in, then they'll never know that you exist.
I think I get what you're saying there. Let me ask you this. I have a couple of questions to follow in rapid fire here. Going somewhere very specific with this. Have you or anyone else, because of being black, ever not been allowed to go to a conference?
Not been allowed to.
Not felt welcome or not anything, but specifically not been allowed because of.
I don't think we've been segregated out of a conference before,
which is good. I mean,
that would be a really interesting.
If that ever does happen, please let me know so I can scream from the rooftops about people doing that, because I'm not okay with that sort of thing. But
we have had instances where black individuals at a conference, as they go back to their hotel, have had the cops called on them for no reason other than black person in a hotel walking behind a large group of white individuals.
Got similar stories on this one. So there are groups within the software development world that have been banned from going to conferences. They're based on both religious background and political affiliation or assumed political affiliation. One of the famous examples is the Linux Foundation banned someone from going to one of their events because a picture surfaced of him wearing one of those red baseball hats that a certain political candidate likes.
Sure.
And now this particular individual, it turns out, didn't even vote for that particular politician. He was just wearing the baseball cap in one picture. Now, people get banned from these events actually fairly regularly for being politically kind of right-leaning, right? So we have that happening at Linux Foundation events and the CGL conference and multiple other conferences around the United States. I don't know about beyond the United States, but USA, because I'm an American and that's most of what I know. Since we have that going on, right, and we do have a group of people or multiple groups of people within the tech community that are outright banned, would you say it makes sense and be supportive of, say, similar groups forming like what you have done, but for those groups, say, conservative Python developers or white, straight, male Python developers? Hear me out. Hold on.
Sure. Okay. Go ahead.
The majority of tech conferences that happened in 2023 had policies in place where they specifically stated that they gave preference for speaking slots, including keynote slots, to women and various minorities, whether it was gender minorities or ethnic minorities and whatnot. Meaning the one group that is specifically ostracized from these events is white, straight men. Now, would you be supportive of, say, a white, straight men Python devs group forming?
Probably got to work on the naming.
I admit it doesn't roll off the tongue very nicely. But do you see where I'm going with this? We have a situation right now, because I'm not a big fan of anyone not being welcome, right? Like, I'm just not a fan of that. It don't really matter. Like, it's like, do I belong to a weird minority group that yes, I do. But what if I didn't? What if I was ostracized because I was not involved in any of those minority groups? Well, what then? And then I know almost the tables get turned, and it makes me very, very uncomfortable. Would you support the creation of such a group, essentially pushing the same agenda that you have, but to encourage more representation of white, straight men at conferences to match that of the locales that they exist in?
That to match up the locales that they exist in, I think, is a really, really...
So Seattle, Portland, Oregon, again, it would be like 90% white, right?
The reason I would say no to this is because I believe that is what the norm is. When you go to a Seattle Python user group, is norm bad? I think when norm is exclusionary, it can be. And I do hear what you're saying,
but in this
regarding
case, norm wouldn't be exclusionary. In this case, the thing that we have happening right now is excluding a specific group. And the only group that is being excluded is white, straight men. Now, I'm a Jewish dude. I can go around and claim my random minority status all I want.
The interesting part of that, though, is yes, you're accurate in saying that there are conferences that give. I would even say most, at least not in the Python community. And again, I will preface this.
So I did a survey. So it's all the open source and Linux conferences, all of the corporate conferences from Google, Microsoft, and a number of others, Oracle. I pulled together like every tech conference I could find and kind of went down the list. And yeah, it's the vast majority. It's some huge percentage number, and maybe there's a good reason for that. But
and you're saying that
we do have a problem of exclusionary.
And you're saying that the reality of this is that the speaker lineups of these conferences are now flipped, and where cis straight white men are the minority of speakers.
No, I'm just saying that people are being excluded.
Well, I don't think they're being excluded.
People are.
I think that's the
being banned from events.
Now, that is a thing that you got me talking based on what I believe.
On hypothetical, you don't know. Yes.
This is my beliefs, not the GNOMEs, not Black Python devs. This is you and I talking.
This is good.
With who knows how many people listening. Do I think it is appropriate to ban someone because of a hat that they wear? I I would say it is just as okay to ban them for their Make America Great Again hat as it would be to ban me for wearing my shirt that matches the sign in the background that says love black people like you love black coffee, which is always fun because people give me the look that you're giving right now, which is just be open about it.
That's fine.
People who love black coffee really love black coffee, and they will tell you about it.
Shout it from the rooftops, whether you like it or not. Add cream, don't add cream, man. Make your choice and go with it.
Exactly. So to me, it is the actions of that person. And this was, I was an organizer for We All JS, which was a JavaScript community specifically designed for the LGBTQIA plus community. I am a cis straight guy. Sure. I'm a black guy, a cis straight black guy. My job there was to make those around me feel comfortable. And it wasn't based on presence. It was based on action. And in terms of Black Python devs code of conduct, as well as my personal belief system, is your action is what will get you kicked out of the community faster than anything that you are wearing. This was a thing that we talked about with do we really want people who aren't black joining this community? And I was like, trust me, anyone who shouldn't be in this community, they will type something quickly to show that they don't need to be in this community. It has nothing to do with the color of their skin. It has everything to do with their actions. I can't speak to the specific instance of where this person was wearing a hat and got kicked out.
Sure.
I don't know. That feels like a stretch. I would say if there was some other evidence saying that this person goes to rallies and has actively spewed hatred towards a individual, a group of individuals, then maybe there can be a conversation about this person not making others feel welcome.
Okay. So here we go. This is interesting. Now, and the reason I bring this up, and I know we're getting into what your particular viewpoints are, and not necessarily that of Black Python devs, is because we are in a situation right now within the, let's say, open source and programmers and developers world, right? The big ecosystem of all of us, where there are large groups of people that feel discriminated against for a variety of different reasons. And it seems to me like a lot of people aren't necessarily willing to consider the other groups, right? So I hear a lot about let's say Black Python devs. I've never seen numerical problems with discrimination against Black Python developers. Now, I'm not a Black Python developer. I don't have that experience, right? Now, I can quantify it from whatever metrics and data I get and try to come up with a cool spreadsheet and graph based on it, but that's really the best I can do there. Yeah. What I have seen is the similar thing happening of people who are vocal Christians. I'm not, but I've heard of a lot of organizations that have been very specific about trying to keep very vocal Christians out of their open source organizations. It's interesting. And
imagine running a community that is built of citizens of countries who are ran by the religious leaderships.
Yes, it's difficult. I used to be on the board of OpenSUSE, and I've worked with a variety of Linux distributions over the years, so I understand. I completely get it. But there are many different, let's say, Linux distributions and desktop environments that say if you don't adhere to our political beliefs, whether it is ideas about transgenderism or ideas about LGBT laws, a lot of times it ends up being around those sorts of things that the conflicts end up happening, or in sometimes just general diversity ideals, a lot of people get excluded. And so when I see groups like yours pop up, it both makes me happy and sad at the same time, because I see it as it's an exclusionary group, but it's trying to bring more people into the tech world, which is both a good, is both good and bad, it's seeming to me. And when I posit to you, would you support, or would Black Python devs be brothers in arms with a white, straight male Python devs? I feel like there's a big hesitancy there, right? You immediately are thinking, and I understand.
Yeah.
But see, that to me is a concern, because then we're not talking about inclusivity, we're talking about exclusivity, and that's not cool.
I think if there were ever a world, again, and a lot of this is we're doing a lot of mental gymnastics for a world that is just not going to be the case. I would say the one situation where that might happen is the Python community at large does not have a lot of insight into what's happening in China.
Okay.
It could be it could be possible that like the majority of Python developers are Chinese. Based on every survey and report that I've seen,
I don't know.
Yeah, that could very much be the reality. And like we don't know because we aren't
you guys
able
are
to
discriminating
work with.
against Chinese people a lot, right?
You know, it's Uyghurs, the Uyghur community. Please, like, reach out. We would have that conversation. Like, this is such an interesting. Again, we're doing a lot of mental gymnastics for a thing that's just not going to happen. But what I will say is that the last question about would we be partners or established communities or supportive, we do this for so many Python groups. Obviously, there's not a lot of Black people in Southeast Asia. My keynote ended with a thank you to the Southeast Asian community, where we work very well with, whom we work very well with, who also show us a great example of how to put a lot of the geopolitical, religious tensions aside and just be Python developers for the few moments that we're all gathered to do this thing, to celebrate this thing that we care about. PyCon APAC was recently held in Taiwan. A lot of Taiwanese communities get a lot of support from China.
Sure. Yes.
Makes sense.
Makes total sense. Yeah.
There was a lot of concern about having an event in Taiwan. Yet they had the event in Taiwan, and they said, take your geopolitics, take your differences, leave them outside the building. We come together. Yeah, we come together and we celebrate Python. We celebrate the community of Python. This year it's in Japan. Japan and Korea have a very historically difficult relationship. Yet somehow they manage to get together, organize an event, a beautiful event, one that I wish I was invited to. I'm going to send some letters and say like, hey, I lived in Japan for 3 years. Come on, I want to go back.
Did you?
I did. I was in the U.S. Marine Corps.
Nice.
And I was stationed in Okinawa, Japan. But in that moment, what we've learned is, and I sent you a link here. Here's a letter from the DjangoCon Africa organizers and the African Coalition of Python leaders. In this, there was an incident that happened last year where they were denied funding, and some of the messaging was around deadlines. They did everything that they were supposed to do by the deadlines. It was on the organizing side of the Python Software Foundation to get the grant to them in time. That didn't happen. There were also questions around their country's LGBTQIA plus laws.
Sure.
And what ultimately happened was, in the end, the conference got their money. They were able to put on a successful conference. The amount of teeth that were pulled could, like, I mean, you can make a set of veneers out of them. Like, it was several sets. It was a challenge, and it was a very big moment in which there were a lot of folks that were upset. This year, we had someone from the Python Software Foundation come into the Black Python devs community and say, every year for PyCon US, we always have money left over for our opportunity grants. Everyone should apply for an opportunity grant. And this year there was more opportunity grants than ever before. Record numbers were shattered. And a lot of people in the community were told no. And when you look at the two things, it wasn't because they were a part of Black Python devs. We had Black Python devs members who had gotten grants. But what we were told was there's always money left over, so there should always be acceptances. This time there wasn't. And it wasn't a matter of, hey, what gives? Well, I mean, it was a matter of, hey, what gives, because there was a lack of transparency around it. But there was this other instance of, regardless of the reason why, how do we show up? How do we help one another out? We raised $12,000 to send 3 people from different parts of Africa. And this wasn't we as a nonprofit. This was we as a band of Black developers who are in a community, not an established organization. I have to emphasize, not as an established organization,
right,
because
that's
we
just
did not
happened.
Well, no, because that's illegal.
Huh.
We can't take money if we're not a nonprofit.
Right.
So what we had to do was say, people that have money that they want to donate to help get these individuals to PyCon US, meet these individuals. Now, take it upon yourself to trust
transfer money
based on us saying we know them, not because they're Black, but because they're the leaders of Python meetups and conferences and other organizations in their community.
Because they're Black. I mean, that's kind of the point, right? Like, it's not. It's not by Python devs of indiscriminate origin. Like, it's Black Python devs. I mean, that's okay. Sure. Like, you can say flat out, it's partly because they're Black. Like, you can be proud of that, and that's fine.
We can absolutely say that these are Black developers who have a history of being in their community, being involved in their community. Also, not to mention that because they're so involved in their community, it's very unlikely that if you give them this money that they're going to disappear. Like,
sure,
they're very, they're very known in the space, and figure it out. And we saw that the community wanted to help. And I think that's the thing that a lot of folks they're seeing this Black Python devs as like, oh, there's this Black Panther party of Python happening. And it's like, no, that's not what we're trying to be.
If you guys start taking hostages, I'm going to be pissed after we do this interview.
You have every right to at that point. But
no hostages, Jay.
Exactly.
All right. We've been going for a while. I want to end with one little final thing to kind of put a bow on this. I think as we've been talking, a few things hit me. Number one, I'm really impressed with what you pulled off. You pulled off a lot in a fairly short amount of time. I find it impressive. I like any organization that brings more developers into the mix, right? Yeah. Get more nerds doing more nerd things. That's a big win for me. I don't really care what someone's ethnicity or what they identify with. I like the nerds. More nerds is good. So all of that is cool. I think you can probably tell as the conversation has gone on that there are some significant areas that you and I are probably going to be pretty far apart on in terms of diversity type stuff. But can I just say that I'm very impressed at how you handle those questions? Most people, very, very bluntly, are not up for having those sorts of discussions. And I find that to be an absolute doggone travesty. You seem like a very cool dude. So thank you, and I'm impressed that you are able to have those conversations, and you didn't ever once flip the table over and start screaming profanities at me. And I only say that because that's happened before.
Oh no!
So I want to end on one final little tidbit.
Sure.
And this is something that's come up a couple of times recently, and that is the argument of and for meritocracy, right? So we've talked about, I know, you immediately head to the side, rolling the eyes. I get it.
The eyes aren't rolling. They're more like going back into my head, trying to figure out like, where are we going with this?
Where is this crazy pineapple shirted man taking me? Mm-hmm. So when you create an organization like Black Python Devs, and your goal is to get, I mean, for better or worse, for however you want to spin it, more Black Python developers, right? And you want to get more Black Python developer representation at events, in organizations, and all of that sort of thing. That being the goal, doesn't that run contrary? Whoa, lightning just went off outside my window. Here it comes.
I thought that was my screen.
No, that was me. Oh,
okay.
There it is. I got a storm coming. We'll wrap this up. Doesn't that run contrary to the core idea of best person for the job, regardless whether it's speaking at a conference, running a dev organization, doing some development and whatnot, regardless of their gender or their skin color or their religion or whatnot? Judging from, I don't know your exact age. I'm a Gen Xer, right? I was born under the Jimmy Carter presidency, right? And so part of the early '90s joy, at least where I lived, was that no one really gave a hoot what your skin color was or what your gender was. We just kind of just went with it, right? Everyone is judged based on what they accomplish, right? You get the job, best person for the job, right? No matter what. That's just kind of how we vibed. But when you create organizations like Black Python Devs, doesn't that go against that? Doesn't that try and steer us away from best person for the job meritocracy and towards let's consider other factors, whether it be gender or ethnicity or skin color or self-identification, instead of in addition to just pure skill and qualifications?
I think if you let it, yes, but I never claim to have let that be how we dictate ourselves.
Okay.
One of the things that I want to emphasize more than anything, as I don't know how many people will hear this, but our community is mostly about equipping
More
and
than you
empowering.
think, but
That's
very,
good.
very heavily conservative.
Great.
Yes.
Great. I mean, I live in Atlanta, Georgia. So like if I leave the city limits, hey, welcome. I was also raised in Knoxville. So I'm
Beautiful.
somewhat
all those
familiar.
areas. Yeah.
Yeah. We are not out here to start crusades against conferences or meetups or whatever. Our focus here is very, very internal. It is here's how you, fellow Black person, can become one of the people who are the most qualified. And what we do is we look at some of the things that other communities have and say, can we have that too? Because not even to like level the playing field, but like if your college program, because it's Stanford, has all these programs that make people feel, beneficial to do all this stuff, all these amazing things. You have the recruiters coming specifically to hire Stanford people because apparently Stanford people are the best, in which I've had great conversations with white individuals who have said, when you have a problem and you go to hire, a person from Stanford, and then you have 2 problems, and then you go to hire another person from Stanford, and now you have 3 problems, then you go to hire another person from Stanford. So I say that in that there are so many people. I'm a college dropout.
Ditto.
I have no college degree.
No.
I had a military education. I joined the military. I spent 5 years there. I became a sysadmin, and I started using Python to automate myself out of a job that ultimately I was just bored doing. And
it's a good reason.
And it took some amazing people, mostly white, to say, hey, you're doing some really cool things. Why don't you get paid to do that? And I go, okay, cool.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Do that.
And I start applying to these companies, and I don't know how to tailor a resume. I've never had anybody tailor, my resume. Okay. So then I go, hey, like, how do I do that? And they give me the advice on make your resume look like this and do these things. And I still don't get any hits. And then finally it took someone saying, I know someone who works here, whose company is hiring.
Yeah, that's
I will put my name on the line for you.
That's how it works for everybody. No matter what the skin color is,
and that's what we are.
Their college graduation is. That's the same for absolutely everybody, and that's networking. And yes, that's networking combined with good personalities and a little bit of meritocracy. That's what that is.
And there are a lot of communities that are never taught that. And what they're being taught instead is the Dev.2 education of tech, which is
But we just taught
do your
them
resume
that.
this way.
But no.
Do these things.
But you just taught them that. You just summed it up of exactly how to do that. Like it's not that tricky. Does it need a whole organization to push that? I don't mean to poo-poo on you.
No, yes, and here's why. Yes, and here's why.
Tell me why.
The day before I went to the San Diego Python user group, where I met those amazing white people, same people I gave hugs to after I gave a keynote at PyCon US 2 weeks ago.
You have white cooties now, by the way. Those don't come.
They've been on me for years. The night before, I posted a question on Stack Overflow. And I didn't receive an answer to my question. Instead, what I got was a simple message. Your code is not Pythonic. And that was the end of the conversation.
Yeah, that sounds like Stack Overflow.
Yeah. So there's a running joke from a lot of Black developers and a lot of women developers that Stack Overflow is a read-only service.
Well, that's a joke from all developers. That's not a black and white thing. I guarantee you didn't get that's not Pythonic because of your skin color, man. Stack Overflow just sucks.
But what I was told, what I saw was the Python community, one, doesn't like new people, period, regardless of race.
It's kind of true. Yeah.
Well, it's in the Python, at least the Python community that I hang out with, it's not true. Like we see new Python developers and we love them and like want to get them involved. Oh, sure. Yeah. Absolutely. And what we're trying to do is say, we're going to be a resource. Everything that we do is public. If white people want to see what we're doing and emulate it, and if it helps bring them success, then great. But what we can offer them is that we are a loose collective of Black leaders in a community that we've seen some success in. I would be lying if I didn't say that I am a success story in the Python community, not just as a Black man, but as an individual. And what I can do is I can say, if you are a Black person that grew up in the Southeast, that didn't have a college degree, here are the things that I did that work. Now, does that work if you live in Cameroon? Absolutely not. Does that work if you live in Chad? Absolutely not. So what we have to do is say, hey, leaders of Cameroon, leaders of Chad, leaders of Zimbabwe, where you didn't get any type of funding until March of this year, how are you being successful so that we can share your story with other developers that have your background?
Is that specific to being Black, though, or just general differences in regions and locales and opportunities that you had as a kid? Like, I mean, because it does matter when you're the only person in the room and your culture differs from that of everyone else around you. It's like being a conservative in the tech space.
Sure. Yeah. And again,
if you in the tech space, you're not allowed, and they specifically swear at you and tell you that you're a racist Nazi and you have to leave the room.
I mean, I feel like
the way it is.
I feel like that's a stretch, but
it's not. It's not.
It absolutely is. I would say most,
just with screenshot after screenshot of executive directors, presidents, and founders of major open source organizations telling me and all other conservatives that we are specifically not welcome. The board of directors for OpenSUSE Linux specifically called all conservatives rotten flesh that need to be cut out. So we have a huge discrimination problem in the tech world. It doesn't seem to be against Black people, though, at least not in the United States. That's why I say when I see your organization, it both makes me happy and sad, because I love any organization, whether it's catering to a small group, a giant group, I don't care. If it brings more nerds into doing nerdy things, it's awesome. And for that, I mean, I got to high five you. And then there's, but the real discrimination that I'm seeing in the tech world it's for Black people, it's for women, it's for LGBTQ people, it's for a variety of minorities. It's against specifically certain groups that are white, straight, male, funder, the heavens are angry we're having this discussion right now, and certain political organizations and certain political leanings, and holy heavens, I told you before we started this, I was like, man, I had like 2 tornadoes last week, another one's coming. I don't know if creating organizations like PyLadies, like Black Python devs, as good as they are, as well-intentioned as they are, as successful as they are, and run by as cool a people as they are clearly run by, really and truly addresses the actual discrimination happening within the tech space, within the programming and open source world. Because the discrimination is not about what are the ratios and what are the percentages of individuals, or how few or how many Jews or Black people or ladies or whatnot are up on stage. The discrimination is in who is excluded because of X. That's where the discrimination is. If there isn't that, then there isn't discrimination. If you are not being excluded from events, you are not being discriminated against. But I can point to a lot of groups that are being discriminated against. And I would posit to say, earlier when I was asking you about what happens if you hit 90%, what happens if you hit 100% Black people in all of Python, which I have no problem with, by the way. That doesn't hurt me in any way, shape, or form.
It's so outside the...
I know. But as long as Python's doing awesome, I could care less if everyone in Python is Chinese. Like you were saying, like what if 100%? Oh my, we might have to cut this short. I think there is a tornado. But you know what? Say your URL so everyone knows where to go find more information.
BlackPythonDevs.com. Can I say one last thing?
You can, assuming that it doesn't take out my internet.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't crush the internet. That's what I would say is I ended my keynote with this. The things that we are trying to do isn't designed to specifically make it more safe, equitable, and accessible for just Black people. That we do believe that by opening the conversation, by talking about a thing that we can, it is a unifier. Hey, here's this group of people.
You want to make it more safe,
exclusive
for conservatives and white straight men.
As long as it's safe for everyone else in the room, okay. I'm perfectly okay with that.
And in that, I think we will agree. As long as everyone is cool and everyone is welcome, I'm happy.
Yes.
Jay, thank you for talking to me about this.
I feel like you changed the word in there. As long as everyone is safe and everyone has accessibility to the event, to the resources.
Okay.
And as long as everybody has the same amount of skin in the game, then I think I'm okay with that. Because I think that safety is where a lot of things start to happen. And again, this is because
it is not safe to be a conservative within the tech world. That is true.
And in some cases, when you have an event in Spokane, Washington, and you're a Black developer being ripped out of your room by the police, it's not safe to be there as a Black man either. So we got to work on making it safe for everyone.
Though that's more of an issue with Spokane. But I point taken completely. Again, thank you for being willing to do this.
Absolutely.
You have cojones, and I am impressed by that. If I could, I would high five you right now. And if we ever get the chance, I would love to buy you a hamburger sometime. Best of luck. Keep rocking out. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm probably going to disagree with a couple of things that you do, but as long as you're giving it your best shot and your intentions are good, I think we can still high five and have a burger at the end of the day.
I think people in the community will disagree with some decisions that we make because, hey, we're having to make decisions on behalf of 500, maybe one day 99% of the Python community, which if you're saying that, I mean, again, I feel like we've got a different problem that we need to address at that point.
The thing that I keep coming back to, I know.
We keep saying we're going to end it.
Stop because of this lightning. Yeah. Is when we talked about this weird, bizarro, hypothetical world with what if we had 100% Black Python developers in all of Python land, right? And I know that what are the odds of that happening? That's crazy. But what if you'd keep going, right? You'd keep going the black Python devs. What if I created white Python devs? And then we hit 100%. There was no black Python devs that existed. Would you think it was cool if I kept going the white Python devs organization to
I'd probably have a conversation as to what you're doing so that we can, but
racist.
Again,
I'm going to call you racist right now. Jay's racist.
I would have that conversation to see what y'all are doing and why it's not working for us. Because I think if you could flip the tables that quickly, there would be the Python community must be extremely fickle if we can change the numbers that quickly.
This exact conversation should be had right now because of people who are conservative not allowed at conferences. They've specifically stated that they will not allow a lot of us at conferences because of the politics. This is, and the numbers, if you start watching the numbers of people and you start cataloging left versus right political, I know it's different, but it's such an extreme swing over the last 10 years at political conferences where it's not like what it used to be. I think a conversation is worth having at this point. So this is what I'm saying. I think the fact that we can talk about this is good. I think we need to have more talks about this because
I'm probably not the best person to talk to about that, though.
Can I tell you something? I don't know that that's true. You are articulate, which I know
that's not a good phrasing.
That's not a good phrasing.
Nope,
you know what? Know what? I'm sticking with it. Jay, you're so articulate. But no, you're nice.
We were doing so good.
Yeah, I was so good. Hey, you gave me permission to use the word colored, I think, earlier on.
Whoa, hold on.
Whoa. No. I really held myself back.
I am not responsible for anything like
I'm sorry.
I genuinely believe
look. The reality is you're confident, you know this landscape, you're thinking about stuff, and you can hold your own in these conversations calmly. I would say you're one of the better people to have these conversations that's out there right now, because most of the people that would disagree with me on a lot of this stuff, which I would put you in that category, really, they're not willing to have these conversations. They're not willing to have these conversations. And you are awesome. That is awesome on you.
Well, shameless plug. If you want me to have more of those conversations, consider donating to Black Python devs. And I mean, hey, with the right amount of donation,
can I tell you something, man? I hope you get a donation surge because of this.
That would be fantastic.
And you had cojones, and you stood your ground. You were intelligent about it. Were you wrong on some things? Yeah.
I'm gonna get I'm gonna get email surge on this more than anything else. But.
Can I tell you a little secret? You're going to get emailed from the GNOME Foundation. They're going to tell you not to talk to me anymore. But you did it, and I'm proud of you, man. And again, seriously, burgers on me. Wherever we're at, burgers on me, and the conversation will only be about nerdy things and really good Southern food. Jay Miller, thank you again for hanging out. Let's go, because I think I'm about to be hit by a tornado. And with that... Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds and nerdettes, I do declare, end broadcast.